Hello, and welcome to another episode of Simply Sequoia. I'm Sequoia, and I'm reading the medical medium Brain Saver. Today, we're going to read about bipolar disorder, chapter 35. Bipolar disorder isn't nearly as sound a diagnosis as it may seem. Today's medical explanations of bipolar disorder, while they may appear convincing, are still theory. Theory, guys, theory. If you or someone you're close with has been diagnosed with bipolar, take heart that it's not the fixed and fated condition that we've been taught. One main ongoing theory is that bipolar is a result of malfunctioning hormones. Chemical imbalance has also been a popular term for decades and still used today. Seeing a family member acting in a way that seems irrational or manic, being up and then down, low and then high, energetic and then lethargic, depressed and then happy, whatever those ups and downs and struggles and difficulties are, it's easy to hear malfunctioning hormones or chemical imbalance and think that fits the bill. When you hear either of these terms, know that they indicate a complete misunderstanding about what's really going on in the brain. Now that's big. Let's underline that. It says, know that they indicate a complete misunderstanding about what's really going on in the brain. Complete. That's a key word there. They're terms that seg naturally into prescriptions for pharmaceuticals that, while they may help some people manage symptoms in the moment, don't remedy the underlying problem. It's always uncertain whether medication will bring improvement to bipolar disorder or not. In most cases of mild bipolar, the non-sedative medications prescribed in those situations don't bring any results. The condition stays the same or can even worsen. In cases of serious bipolar disorder, where mania reaches a life-threatening level, the extreme pharmaceuticals applied are mostly used for their sedative nature to get someone to shut down on a certain level to stop the episodes. Coming off those medications takes weaning a little at a time so that the person can try to move forward slowly while avoiding another bout of mania. Nowhere in any of this is an understanding of a chemical imbalance, and nowhere in any of it is an understanding of the real cause. The term diagnosis sounds credible and serious, like it must be based on advanced technology. Centuries of medical science and billions upon billions of dollars invested in the medical world, all of it leading to a deep understanding of the human body. Meanwhile, if you stop to think about the terminology given to someone who is emotionally struggling with the particular symptom of bipolar, it means no more than up and down, high and low. A bipolar diagnosis only echoes and oversimplifies how patients themselves describe the experience. The name should go a step further to explain the why of what's happening. A diagnosis of bipolar disorder should more accurately be called heating-cooling disorder, or HCD. All right, let's talk about the bipolar triggers. Most mysterious conditions, depression and anxiety among them, require a trigger. It could be a trigger outside the body or inside the body. First, let's be clear that a chemical imbalance is not a trigger for bipolar disorder. One trigger that can bring about a manic episode is an emotional experience activating the adrenals into releasing excess adrenaline to be derived to the brain. Trauma is one example that stimulates the adrenals, causing this surge of adrenaline. The sudden death of a loved one, a continuous divorce, receiving bad news, being betrayed by someone you love and not getting a chance to process it. Other life events that are difficult to handle, these can direct a tremendous amount of adrenaline to the brain. When you come down from this adrenaline surge, that's when a depressive episode occurs. Emotions are not the only trigger for bipolar disorder. Chemical exposure can trigger bipolar as well. You could be standing out in front of an apartment building while a city chemical truck drives by spraying tick spray, mosquito spray, or caterpillar spray. Maybe your chemical exposure even happened from something toxic you ate in a fast food meal. Maybe you had your mercury fillings removed. Maybe you got medical treatments that were recommended for travel. Often people who suffer from bipolar are afraid to get emotional. They know they may be seen as reactive or overreactive. And so they may try to hide from society to some degree, not communicating as much as they need to or should. Their depression and reluctativeness are often seen, their depression and reclusiveness are often seen by the people who know them as part of the bipolar disorder when they're not. Distancing is a way of navigating how the world reacts when you've been called out as having bipolar. Parents, spouses, partners, or other people who live with bipolar folks often get nervous for them out of caring and loving place and get extra sensitive and receptive to what could be a moment of struggle. They get nervous, for example, if the bipolar individual is on a high, accomplishing a lot, because they're familiar with the crash that could be coming. Meanwhile, those with bipolar often sense their loved one's nervousness and feel they need to hold back their emotions. Everybody has an emotional state. Everyone. And everybody has triggers to their emotions. The difference with someone whose symptoms have gotten them a bipolar diagnosis, whether mild or severe, is that there's something else going on inside the brain that's triggerable. We could hide the truth about what that is and go along with the theory that it's hormone or genetic or chemical imbalance. We could do that, but we're not going to. Let's talk about metals retaining heat. Toxic heavy metals are the underlying cause of bipolar. Are you guys noticing a theme here? That toxic heavy metals play a drastic role in almost all symptoms and conditions? As we've covered elsewhere in the book, when someone has any elevated amount of metals, such as mercury in the brain, their brain runs hotter. With bipolar, the heating is different because the combination of metals, the alloy, retains heat longer. Generally, the alloy behind bipolar is composed of mercury, copper, toxic calcium, arsenic, toxic platinum, and nickel. The level of each metal are different for everyone, and the combination can vary. For example, a person may be missing or have very low levels of one or two of these metals. Another person may have higher levels of one or two metals. When someone experiences bipolar disorder, higher levels of toxic calcium and copper especially are present. Copper and calcium. When certain combinations, actually I'm going to underline that because that's very interesting. Toxic calcium. Have y'all heard of it? When certain combinations of metals are fused together and these metals get heated up, the heat can last for a longer period of time because the metals hold on to heat. This heat is constant, occurring all the time, yet its temperature is always fluctuating. When toxic heavy metals are in the emotional centers of the brain, impeding electrical impulses and neuron activity, increased heat occurs on an ongoing basis, making someone highly emotional even when life is seemingly okay, and even during sleep. Someone with bipolar disorder who's not on medication will often be in a heightened dream state for much of the night, experiencing a barrage of dreams because of the continual fluctuating brain heat without medication suppressing neuron activity. Let me underline that because that's really interesting. A heightened dream state, huh? People with bipolar disorder often liken the condition to having somebody else inside their head controlling them. They can't stop their depression, their manic behavior, their highs and lows because it's as if someone else, an entity or alien almost, has taken over. Those who know a bipolar sufferer can often identify a look in their loved one's eyes or a way of talking fast and not listening that says they're struggling to fight off being taken over by their condition. As the metals in the emotional centers of the brain heat up, it's not a quick acceleration of heat that's followed by a quick deceleration of the heat. Instead, the lasting heat radiates from these metals into brain cells and neurons in the emotional centers of the brain. As a result, brain cells and neurons in the region around these metals dehydrate and burn out and atrophy because of the excess heat. That alone is enough for someone to experience what I call low-grade renditions. Okay, I don't know what he calls it. What he calls low-grade renditions of bipolar disorder. For more distinctive heightened bipolar disorder, someone needs a trigger, and the ultimate trigger is adrenaline. Bam. Adrenaline, heavy metals, all that stuff. Okay, let's talk about the electrical storm in the brain. Every single person has hardships and struggles and confrontations and difficulties at one point or another in their life. And with them comes more intense adrenaline and more of it. That's not an imbalance. It happens to all of us. For someone with bipolar disorder, the flood of adrenaline is a trigger. Here is why. Someone with toxic heavy metals in the emotional centers of the brain needs a little bit more adrenaline. If they're going to exercise or exert themselves, for example, they need a little more adrenaline to do that than the next person. This is because the emotional centers of the brain are sending a signal to the adrenals for help. Our body uses adrenaline as a remedy in times of any kind of crisis from mild to extreme. When the metal alloys behind bipolar disorder are present in the brain's emotional centers, causing a continual heating process, it warrants the call for additional adrenaline to keep the electricity balanced and flowing through the emotional centers of the brain. Compromised, dehydrated brain cells and neurons in this area require adrenaline to alter and change the course of the electrical pattern and the heat that's being produced. When adrenaline enters an already hot brain, it helps that person function and get what they need in one sense. It also ignites electricity on an explosive level. When it's happening day after day, an adrenaline rush to the environment that's already hot due to heavy metals ignites an electrical storm that's very disruptive. The acute, excessive heating from the excess adrenaline can't be cooled until burnout occurs. Whoa, let me underline that, because burnout is intense. It can't be cooled until burnout occurs. This is when a person works for 72 hours and then crashes for days. It's when someone goes on a long jag of talking rapidly without listening and then afterward goes quiet. It's when someone makes an impulse, irrational decision that's not healthy for them, followed by a depression, deep sadness, and feeling of guilt and shame, accompanied by a fatigue and absence of motivation and drive. The bipolar electrical storm and its aftermath can display themselves in so many ways to so many different degrees. Adrenaline rushing to treat compromised area of the brain can also lead to emotional sensitivities that varies in every single person struggling with this condition. For example, they may easily become triggered by anything that is stressful. Let's read about how bipolar is not a one-size-fits-all. It's not as simple as bipolar 1 disorder, bipolar 2 disorder, and bipolar 3 disorder. It's bipolar 1 through bipolar 1 million. Everyone's toxic heavy metal load is different. Bipolar is not a genetic disorder. So sick of hearing all this stuff about genetics. I think genetics are insanely cool. But let's stop saying that sickness, illness, disease, disorders is genetic, because it's not. Having someone else in the family with similar symptoms does not mean it has to do with genes. It has everything to do with toxic heavy metals traveling through the bloodline. Heavy metals get passed along from generation to generation for hundreds or even thousands of years and find their way to different parts of the body in every person. Sometimes they end up in the emotional centers of the brain, which is how brothers and sisters and aunties and uncles and parents can exhibit similar bipolar characteristics. It's not genetic predisposition. I hear that a lot. Oh, I'm predisposed. You're not. Why would you even want that? Why would you even say that? Why would you even claim that? Genes have a wonderful place in this world. But disease is not genetic. Disease is not genetic. Disease is not genetic, okay? And that's amazing. It's amazing that disease is not genetic, because that means you can heal from any symptom and condition. Any. Even the ones that they say aren't possible. You can heal from it. Bipolar can also change over time for the person experiencing it. At a certain point, a bipolar sufferer's adrenals can shift and change. The metals can shift and change too. As a result, symptoms can alter in any direction as someone ages with this condition. Oxidation is one reason the metals shift and change, in part because individuals with bipolar tend to have less aluminum in their alloys. The oxidation that eventually occurs in bipolar alloys tend to intoxicate brain cells and neurons differently from the heavy metal oxidation in other brain conditions. With the alloy behind bipolar, the oxidation process tends to last longer due to the continual heat. While this oxidation doesn't necessarily spread to adjacent brain tissue like with other conditions, a certain level of oxidation does occur as the years go by from the group of metals that causes bipolar disorder. This can affect the symptoms someone is living with, and that doesn't automatically mean for the worse. The brain is an incredible organ. And electrical patterns constantly being altered as the years go by can sometimes even work in someone's favor when they're struggling with a condition such as bipolar. The metals are still there in the brain creating bipolar, only now it may be less mania and more depression. That numbed, depressed experience of life will last until the adrenals recover, at which point the adrenaline surges, and with them, the manic episodes may start up again. The most effective way of treating this disorder is to remove the toxic heavy metals from the brain and the rest of the body. Let me underline that. This is very, very, very important. When you remove toxic heavy metals using the Heavy Metal Detox Smoothie by Anthony Williams, the medical medium who wrote this book, your life is going to get a hell of a lot better. It is incredible. I personally healed my level 2 autism, and I don't say healed lightly. I healed my level 2 autism using this smoothie and completely changing my lifestyle, what I eat, and what I think. Incredible. Science and research currently says it is impossible and that autism is genetic. I knew it wasn't genetic because I was not born with it. I remember not having it. I remember developing autism. And it's going to sound crazy to some of you guys, but I remember developing autism and I healed it. I did. I am not autistic anymore. I don't even think I would pass. And many people actually online, when I share this story, many people don't believe I ever had it, which is incredible. Which kind of proves my point that I don't have it anymore because people don't even believe me. I had to literally show my paperwork. And then they're like, oh, your paperwork does say level 2. Well, maybe you still have it then. And then I'm like, well, didn't you just say that I didn't? I don't have the symptoms. All right, last piece of the chapter, soothing and cooling relief. Your brain uses surges to protect itself. So glycogen storage in the brain plays a big role in how severe someone's bipolar disorder is. The more glycogen storage, the less someone's going to suffer from bipolar. Whoa, I gotta underline that. The more glycogen storage, the less someone's going to suffer from bipolar because the less they'll get injured by the electrical storm in the brain or the brain's inability to cool itself. More glycogen forming in brain tissue that neurons run through is critical for helping somebody with bipolar. The brain is amazing. Its adaptive ability allows it to shift according to circumstances so that we can shift and adapt to. With metals gone from the brain, and specifically gone from the brain's emotional centers, the brain can cool itself to prevent emotional meltdowns. And when someone is getting enough glucose, even natural surges in healthy carbohydrates to fortify the brain, it can regulate its temperatures even better. Your brain bringing in glucose is like rain rolling in to die out a fire after lightning. And this right here is coconut water. Very hydrating, very glucose rich. For specific bipolar disorder support beyond what's offered in this book, refer to the Bipolar Disorder Protocol in this book's companion, Brain Saver Protocol, Cleanses and Recipes. All right, we have finished chapter 35, all about bipolar. Did you learn anything? Because I did. We talked about bipolar triggers. We talked about what metals retaining heat does. We talked about the electrical storm. We talked about how it's not a one-size-fits-all. And we talked about the soothing, cooling relief of glucose / glycogen. So if you liked this video, go ahead and like and subscribe and follow for more. I am absolutely going to be reading this entire book. So if you are new here, welcome. Go ahead and listen to the other chapters. No need to rush, okay? We are just going along. In next episode, we're going to read about Alzheimer's and dementia. That will be exciting. So, if you want to follow me on TikTok, I'm also on there it's simply Sequoia. I think they didn't have like the full name, so it's simply __ Sequoia. I might change my name here because I kind of want to have my name on all the platforms. But anywho, I am rambling, so I will let you go. Bye.